This is Rachel Dworkin from the Chemung County Historical Society. Today is July 24th, 2020. I'm recording for the COVID Memory Project. Today I am speaking with
Jared Aiosa. That's Jared. Aiosa is Aiosa.
Okay, and you are the owner of Heroes Your Mom Threw Out Comic Book Shop. Is that correct?
That is correct, yep. We've shortened it to Heroes Comic Shop over the years because, golly, it's about 17 years ago or more when I was doing the planning and what have you. I thought the name was hilarious, and years later, it's when you answer the phone and when you do business cards and when you have moms in the store, Heroes Comic Shop, it just works better. It flows better.
Okay. How long have you owned the shop?
Yeah, so we are. I think it's gonna be 17 years in October. So in 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 or 5 different locations, and so we've been in the Heights for, goodness, about 13 years, 14 years of that.
Okay. So how did COVID impact the store and you?
Sure, definitely. So I'll just go straight to, like, on a personal level. Because it's still kind of new. So being a divorced dad of 3, it's still not quite 3 years later. It's still kind of fresh, still kind of new in the grand scheme of things because my son is 19 now. And so, the number one thing, and it's interesting because, doing this interview, I'm mindful of my attitude and my experience. And even when talking to friends, even when talking to customers, I would kind of gauge how it's affected them, and that would kind of depend on how much I shared with them, because in actuality there was a lot of positives. So so custody of my kids, I would really only get them 3.5 days of the week, and so here I am, going from getting them ready in the morning, going to school, getting them back from school, making dinner, what have you, showers, kind of a very busy lifestyle of homework, dinner, getting ready for bed, to waking up, and it's funny because even the routine changed, because at first when COVID shut everything down, shut schools down, I went from like, okay, we were told 2 weeks, 15 days, or what have you, and so I, like a lot of parents, took it very serious as like, okay, let's not get out of the routine, because we're all very familiar with like the summertime routine, and then when like those couple weeks when school's about to start and you're like, okay, I gotta practice, going to bed on time, waking up early, what have you. So, I took it very serious as like, okay, guys, you still got to wake up, you still got to act like you're going to school, even though you're not, because you're going to go back to school. And so, but it was, for me, it was great because the amount of time that we spent, now I don't have a huge apartment, so there's that, but it's not that it was always fun because, my youngest is in kindergarten, and, I would just do everything to kind of mentally be like, okay, are we good? We wiped the sweep from our eyes, we had breakfast, we're cool, now we're doing schoolwork, and so, and so, it was really good to finally kind of get a grasp on where she was. And, there wasn't a whole lot of homework in kindergarten. There'd be, some here and there. But I went from doing, maybe 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of homework after school to doing all day, doing the schoolwork. And so, I really enjoyed it. I really did, because of just the amount of time. And it was different from summer in the sense that, like, having your kids home with you during the summertime, you're kind of thinking of how to keep busy. Like, okay, let's get out of the house. Let's go outside. Let's enjoy. Let's be productive. Let's do something. To versus, okay, it's crummy. It is, so March, April, and, April, May in upstate New York, it was winter. We had occasional, nice days, but it was still kind of cold. It was crummy. It was snowing. I think it was like late April. I think even like May wasn't that great. So we knew we were going to be home. And so the other thing that was very, very different for me was the amount that I cooked. Like, again, it was the first time that I was like, okay, we want cereal in the morning. Cool, no problem. But, there'd be times, so, we would do, pancakes or waffles or whatever. So I just kept super busy because, going from like, preparing breakfast to doing homework to taking a break for lunch, finishing up, and then kind of being like, all right, what are we going to do for dinner? And in the whole time, like, I knew that like gyms were shut down and I knew that it was going to be dangerous. And what I mean is like, we just baked a ton of like cookies and cupcakes like every single week. And so like I've never used my oven as much as I did during that time because I just wanted to keep busy, and for me, I run a bookstore, I run a comic book store, so in a sense, I'm not going to say TV's the enemy, but it's the last resort. It's the last thing I'm interested in. It's the last thing I'm turning on. It's the last way I really want to spend time. And so, it's the beautiful thing about, just kind of having my kids for part of the week, because we had this this carrying like plastic, like reusable tray. So we would have this thing where we would just load it up. If we're making cookies one day, if we were making cupcakes the other day, and you could just decorate them, and I would just let them go wild. And I would be like, okay, we're putting them in this container. You could have like one or two, whatever, and we are getting them out of here. Go take them with you. I don't want them here. I don't want to gain 10 pounds. And again, that was just, that was our jam. And it got to a point where like, okay, I got to think of something else. We've made a ton of cookies. We've made all the cupcakes we could look at. We've done every single, color or whatever. I mean, my table was just, stained in food coloring or whatever. And so, yeah, it was just different ways to, be creative, be productive, and, yeah, it was awesome. And so, and again, that's not painting a rosy picture like, oh, it was awesome all the time. No, because kids don't want to do homework. They don't like their parents as teachers. They don't even like their teachers, half the time. And so things definitely changed. I would say things got harder from that point of like when you're mentally thinking like, okay, you're going back to school in 15 days and 20 days or whatever. And then they would extend it. So they're like, okay, it's this other phase. It's, phase 2, get the packets or what have you. And then when it was announced, like, nah, no one's going back to school, it got harder. It got harder because then it's just like, well, why do I have to wake up, at 7 in the morning or whatever? There's no school to go to. And I'm like, man, kids are smart, so my middle one's, in 6th grade going into 7th. And that's a smart age where they're just like, I can argue with you now. And I'm like, yes, you can. So you're going to keep me on my toes. And so, yeah, so that's definitely, so that's the personal, aspect of it. And I had to look back before this interview. So as the assistant manager of a movie theater, it was, I think, Sunday, March 15th. Was our last, I think that was my last shift, that we were open as a theater. And I was looking back, on my phone at that time of like March, and man, like that was a real weird time, because by then we have seen stories of, what was going on in China, what was going on in Italy, and around the world. And, I distinctly remember that time, at the theater of like, okay, we got to ramp up our cleaning regimen, at the store, ramp up the cleaning regimen or whatever. And we really didn't have time for it to take because we were shut down, I think a week or so later. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll still kind of go in, the theater, check in on, my friend, the manager and such. But, that's certainly, one of the negatives is the unknown of the future of a lot of businesses. That's one of the things that's disheartening. And there are some serious negative effects and business closures, be it corporations, be it restaurants, be it what have you, in your town, and again, there's a huge difference between your friend, that owns, the local, barbecue place or what have you versus, like Friendly's or Denny's. But no one wants to see it. No one wants to see it. No one feels good about that. And so, we're still not even in the aftermath, and I'm kind of skipping ahead. But, that's something that everyone around me is definitely mindful of, and it's frustrating. So I will let you ask the next question.
Okay. So, talking about the comic shop.
Definitely.
You were closed, mid-March?
Yeah. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
How did business go from there? And
Absolutely.
Just tell me about the business.
Definitely, yeah. So comics are great, and it's interesting because I work both in comics and a theater, and so there's a lot of similarities in the sense that everyone knows a new movie will come out, maybe Thursday at midnight or Friday, and so that's the weekend release. So with comics release day is Wednesday, and so I'll spend typically most of my Tuesday getting boxes in from UPS, counting hundreds of books, making sure everything's in good shape, setting them up, and then we'll have reserves. So if there's a book you like, we'll reserve it for you, and you come in anytime, Wednesday or through Saturday, and pick it up. And so, same thing. We saw it coming. There wasn't a lot, and New York was. I don't know if New York was one of the first states to shut down, because it might have been California. I think it was San Francisco, and then, areas of California, and then New York. So there was a general sense of unease, in mid-March, and then there was closure, or not closure, just shutdown. So I think it was announced, maybe it was announced on a Monday. Like, all right, if you're a non-essential business, like that Saturday or Sunday, I think it was Sunday, March 23rd, that's it. And so it was a matter of just talking to customers, putting it out there on social media, guys, girls, buds, stock up. We don't know. We don't know. And so, on my last post, it was a picture of Spider-Man squinting, is this it? What's next? And a picture of me just kind of waving, goodbye. Because on that day, we just didn't know. I think we were still, as a society, hopeful, okay, 15 days, lock it down, 2-week quarantine, and we're going to beat this. And here we are, end of July, and yeah, I'm still hopeful, because that's the type of person that I am, You can't run a comic shop and be a negative person, because I'm not saying it's antiquated, but how long has print on paper been around?
A while.
It's as old school gets, and it's my favorite, and so you have to be hopeful that people will still want to read, that they'll want something tactical. You want to be hopeful that people just love drawing and writing and telling stories, and all different genres, just fantastical, entertaining stories, whether it's romance or whether it is superhero. You have to be hopeful, and I love Chemung County, I really do, but I'm a realist. It's a not well-to-do. It's a pretty broke county. And so hope is, kind of everything. I have to work, multiple jobs to keep my one thing I love, my passion, be it, if that's a word, going. And so, yeah, so I didn't know. I didn't know. I was hopeful. This is funny, 'cause I don't want to talk about money much. But I remember, you can't be a business owner and not, be mindful of money or whatever. So I remember just setting aside, cash in just regular envelopes and saying, okay, here's rent, for the next month or whatever. Here's apartment rent, here's store rent, here's, grocery money or whatever. I remember setting aside envelopes being okay, I think I'm good for the next month or month and a half or what have you. And so, and then I was also, I'm not going to lie, I was also like kind of looking forward to it, because I'm sure this is a story that's been shared by a lot of people. Free time. Like, oh man, I'm going to have time to do this. And I remember thinking that, like, oh, awesome. I'm going to read so much. I'm going to write these projects I always wanted to write. And I got a bit of writing done. But it's funny because I start this interview talking about how busy I was just with the family life, because that was kind of unexpected. When like businesses, shut down or whatever, I was like, okay, this could be cool. This could be fun for a time. But I wasn't anticipating like, oh, dude, you're going to like turn into, the teacher and the home chef and the entertainer, and it's going to be a full day for you. And so, yeah. Just the comic industry. So this is the one thing I wanted to research, and I didn't research perfectly, so I'll apologize for that. So the main comic companies. So Marvel is owned by Disney, and DC Comics is owned by Warner Brothers / AT&T. So when Disney furloughed their park employees, they pretty much furloughed mostly everyone. And it's interesting, the things that we learn during this time. And one of the things I learned was Disney makes a ton of money from their theme parks, which is, I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, they're neat and all, but I didn't realize that, like, man, they generate some money. So I'm not 100% certain, but I am pretty certain that, the writers, artists, editors, for Marvel were furloughed for a time. So that means, that we went from weekly comic books coming out, 52 weeks out of the year, to the machines just stopping, screeching to a halt. And even if everyone was not furloughed, there were literal machines that didn't operate. So no one was printing anything. No one was, shipping anything. We're still, there's still kind of thing with Canada and the U.S., that's still like, okay, stuff is still, we're in end of July, almost August here. Stuff is still backtracked and backlogged or whatever. It's why I don't like to use the word normal. When are we getting back to normal, new normal? I'm not going to use the word, because it's not. I don't know, what will change going forward. And I have a feeling we'll be wearing masks for a while, and that's fine. I got no problem with that. So yeah, I don't like the word normal. So in terms of comics, though, it changed. And not just comic books, not just bookstores. The huge aspect of this industry are conventions. That, I'm grateful that I am not, really involved. Like, I'll help plan, and it's funny because the local library had a convention planned, but in terms of like a very big time and money investment, there are a lot of conventions, internationally, and just like that, just gone, and we're talking, it has to be billions of dollars. From San Diego, which again would have been like right this week, from Toronto to New York, just mega huge conventions. And so, from my experience, I am very mindful of people that, are hurting and are going through a very difficult time. And there are, thousands of creative people dependent. This is what they would do. And it's interesting because we know of like comic artists that, would work, on regular comic books, and then for a time just kind of went away because they could actually generate better income, more relaxed, income, just doing commissions, just, having a website, having a web presence, and saying, hey, hit me up, pay for it, do a commission, mail it out to you. versus working 10-hour days on a comic book, 20 some odd pages, so that's. And when does that, moving forward, when do they happen again? What do they look like? A lot of people talk about that. Again, I mean, San Diego, that's what you did. You wanted to go to a convention, you wanted to see this artist, this creator, this actor, actress. You just dived into humanity with thousands of other people, in a building, and we accepted that.
So you do the one that the library puts on, and I've seen you at the River Road.
Yeah. So in the past, I was more involved with conventions or what have you, and less and less these days. So for one reason or another,
So you closed in the middle of March. When did you start to reopen?
Sure. And so that was very tricky, and it's there's a lot of different opinions in New York State. I'll say, because nothing has been simple about this. Nothing has been clear about this, because I do believe that we are all trying to do our best. People will disagree with that statement, and that's fine. Like, people are absolutely allowed to be angry. Be it restaurant owners, be it bar owners, definitely. I'm not going to sugarcoat people's opinions and feelings, but at the end of the day, I do believe that in general, people want safety, security, what have you. Now again, some people think it's control, and that's fine. I mean, I got friends, different degrees, So, my plan really was just to, so when I didn't have my kids, I would just keep busy, and it was difficult for me to, there was definitely some anxiety about how I was spending my time, because I was given this opportunity that I'll never, I'll probably never get again. I hope, in a sense, I hope to never, have this happen again and never get that much free time, quote unquote. And so, part of me would take some time and do some writing or what have you. And then the other part of me would be like, okay, well, I should work on inventory and what have you. And so, I did both, and that's the problem. I probably wasn't super effective on either one. The store doesn't look immaculate, organized, or clean, and I didn't get as much writing as I would have liked to have. And so, there was definitely a time of, okay, what's going to happen with money or what have you. And so I didn't, a lot of comic shops, I would say most comic shops just started, and that's the thing, if you run a comic shop, nothing's easy, and so you really have to be hands-on. And I don't really know any that were kind of laid back, just riding it out. And so a lot of them went to eBay, and just everyone's got inventory. Every store has a ton of inventory, and so they just threw a lot of it, on eBay, or they would do like live videos, like live auctions or whatever. And for me, I wanted to keep it more almost kind of regional or localized or what have you. And so, of course, I have a ton of inventory. So I took this opportunity to just go through boxes and just find massive runs. So X-Men in the 90s, there's a lot. There's a lot of teams. And so, I would just take huge runs of literally like X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, Excalibur, and just put together like 50 to 100 issues. They weren't straight runs, maybe it was like issues like 1 through 35, and I'd be missing like 10 or 15 or whatever, and I would just bundle them together. And so I wanted to do it regionally, so I just went to Instagram, And so, I have a personal Instagram page, I have a store page, and then I just made a new one that was like Heroes Mega Sales. And so I just let friends know. I said, hey, if you are, looking to read or whatever, I'm just going to put this stuff, I'm just going to blow it out super cheap. That's the other thing about kind of my policy. So a brand new comic, single comic book, price creep keeps on going up. It was $3, then it was $3.99, and now we're starting to see it at $4.99, sometimes $5.99. So I'm mindful because I love comics, and I never want to say, this new one that just came out, this is awesome, this is the best. This comic that came out like 2-3 years ago, not so good, so it's only 50 cents or $1. I'm very mindful of, I would not so much inventory because I have a lot of it, but I'm mindful of perception. I don't want to downgrade something because it's quote unquote old, So again, if it's a 5-issue arc and I'm missing issue 3, yeah, sure, sell it cheap, whatever, it's incomplete. But just this idea that comics from 10-15 years ago are quote unquote trash or worthless, it's not fair. So I very rarely like to sell comics at like 20 cents or whatever. But in this instance, I'm just like, here you go, guys. Here's 100 comics, $35 or whatever. And it was awesome. It was a great deal. And so, so I would just post it on Instagram, and I would most of the times mail it out. Because this gets into the other discussion of curbside. Now, during this time, now we're going to get into the independent business versus big corporations. And I didn't lead with this, but boy, am I and a lot of people frustrated about it. Because yes, we need grocery stores. Yes, we need retail stores. And we can't shut down online stores. They exist. Can't stop technology. But boy, during this time, who made out really well?
Online retailers.
100%. 100%. And again, I'll never guilt someone. Hey, you bought all of your gifts for Christmas on Amazon. Why? That's not my jam. My jam is to make sure that I don't until it's like 4 days before Christmas, and families get this feeling of like, did I buy enough? Did I spend too much on this one child and not the other? And then I'll frantically buy stuff on Amazon and hope that it comes before Christmas Eve. So there is this frustration of, how come Walmart and Target were allowed to open? Grocery stores, sure, yeah, definitely. But why was Walmart the only store open that sold clothes, and clothing stores weren't? Clothes, shirts, pants, whatever, pretty important. Shoes, sneakers, I'm not saying like, oh, this is the latest pair of sneakers, I need them. But in general, pretty important. So there is definitely displeasure in this concept of this list of retailers, corporated retailers that were allowed open versus, independent stores that were not. And it's frustrating because essential, I'm not going to get on a high horse about what's essential, but boy, was I frustrated that libraries were not deemed essential. And I'm not going to say like, hey, the liquor store was open versus the library. I said it, but I'm not going to say it. What as a society do we deem essential, and why aren't books that? I'm not saying me. I'm really not, because honestly, new comics stopped coming out. And if someone wanted to read comics, we made it work. Wink, wink. But a library? It was, here we go. It was, during quarantine, during like straight up quarantine for 2 weeks, it was put out there like, hey, just just binge on Netflix. Hey, just, you'll be okay. Like, enjoy this time and just watch Tiger King. Just watch this. Like, just keep yourself busy. It was never like, hey, start this new book series. Hey, we didn't promote like a contest to write a short story or whatever. We said as a society, just, mental health is important, definitely. Just keep yourself busy and watch something. Just relax, try not to stress out. No emphasis on literacy. And that's what bugged me. That's what bugged me. Amazon made out really well. So the other thing that I did was I got into the stock market a bit through Robinhood, and I'll talk about that a little bit also. So, I paid attention to the stock market, and again, thank goodness, during a pandemic, is it weird that the stock market did okay? Did okay. Propped up by some big companies. Google one, Tesla another, Apple another, Netflix did really well, Disney did really well. So here's the thing we learned about Disney. And again, I spent a lot of attention to Disney because Marvel's essentially, the number one seller of comics. DC's it's a second, definitely. But Marvel, has been beating DC for a while. And so I pay attention to Disney. With as much of their income that's based on, theme parks, Disney Plus made up a nice chunk. And so, again, going to the very first thing I talked about, kids, having kids, keeping us busy. Again, TV was it was the last resort. Like, all right, guys, I get it. Yeah, it's winter. We did everything we could. You've drawn as much as you could. You did your homework. We ate dinner. Yeah, finally, sure. We'll watch something for like an hour. And so I am grateful that it exists, of course. I have Netflix, like most everyone. But I think as a society, without, boy, Jared, you sound really preachy here. Okay. But as a society, that's the go-to. Other tangent. I was very fortunate that my school district gave out like paper packets, especially at first. And then near the end, it became, especially with my sixth grader, it became almost all online learning. So am I frustrated that it's very easy or almost implied or pushed to say, okay, we're going to do the schoolwork. Everything's online on a computer. You're going to look at a computer screen because you have no choice. There's no paper anything. You are looking at a screen because you have to for school learning. And then when you're done with that, you want to kind of chill out or whatever. So you're going to watch TikTok. A young person is spending how many hours looking at an electronic screen? And, is it, I'm getting older? Fine. Whatever. Fine. But I'm pretty sure as a young person, as a teenager, I enjoyed like tactical, paper or what have you. And, I liked movies and all, but just this idea of just being in front of, be it video games or whatever, a screen, there's a futile. Growing up, I always felt different in the sense of like playing a video game for hours versus reading a book for hours. I always felt, and I talked to my friends about this, like have you felt a sense of accomplishment after, spending 50, 60 hours on a video game versus like finishing a book series? Like, that's just me. And again, I don't want to come off obnoxious. I really don't. But if I do, fine. I just moving forward, with schooling, I hope that is something that they look at and consider. That, come on, how many hours are we going to ask young people to look at a screen. Because again, for enjoyment, for video games or movies or whatever, there's no analog version of that. That's all digital. And so if we're asking them also for their education to be digital, think about just think about that. Consider that. And this isn't like, oh, hey Jared, you sell comics, you want to sell more comics. No, I love comics because at its bare bones, what do you need to make a comic? You could use a pen or a pencil and paper. You can buy a ream, and so here's the thing about Walmart. You could buy a ream, 50 sheets of paper for under $4. You could buy, a pack of pens, for $1, and you're good to go. The thing with technology is, it's made printing comics or even reading comics online, it's made it accessible and easier. But the fact of making comics, technology is not going to help you make comics. It's not going to come up with an idea. That's all you. That's all a person. That's your idea. That's your drawing. Technology is helpful, but when it comes to, and that's the thing about COVID. Here's this time that you have. You get to spend how you want. And anyone can make comics. Not everyone wants to. Not everyone enjoys it, but anyone can. And that's what drew me into comics, younger, was money's not going to make you, and that's the thing with book writing or what have you. Money isn't going to make you a good book writer, what have you. And there's this thing about Stephen King and his kids or whatever. That's some salty people, because you still have to, you still have to do it. You still have to be a good storyteller, and that's not based on money or whatever. So it's the great, talent in a sense, or hard work is a good equalizer. Comedians. We've never really looked at comedians and said oh, okay, that one comes from a well-to-do family, or that one grew up broke or whatever. You have to know how to do your craft, and so craft, is not equal to money or income or power or what have you. It's hard work and talent. So man, I go on a bunch of different tangents. So I will have you rein me back in.
Okay, so when did you go to Curbside?
Yes. Yeah. So man, Curbside was fun. Curbside was fun because I didn't do it too often, and I'll share you another story. So, and it's funny because I've reconnected with that friend recently. So when I first started doing comics, I had a friend, I think it was his mom or a family member, didn't quite believe that comic shops existed, because she said to him that can't be a store that just sells comics. It has to be a front. Meaning and he told me that and I laughed. And so that goes back to Curbside, because Curbside did feel like a very kind of illicit type thing. So I just put out there all right guys, hit me up on Facebook Messenger, here's my cell phone number, tell me what you want, because there's nothing new coming out, so everything is just inventory. And so I had some very good friends that were just okay, I'm behind on this series, or I had some friends that were just just whatever you recommend. I'm oh okay. And so so there was definitely some work involved. And so so we would just communicate with each other, be okay, what time are you meeting up? And Curbside wasn't really set. It was, but it wasn't, because here's Walmart and Best Buy and everyone, they've been doing Curbside for weeks. And so for me, there wasn't this clear is it allowed or is it not allowed? And here I am telling this interview, because there certainly was a set date in New York when they were just okay, stores are open, Curbside, in parentheses, Curbside. And that was a lot of trepidation and anxiety, finding out, well, what is Curbside versus just coming in? Because if you went to a restaurant or whatever, it's Curbside, but you could walk into the entry, and so it was a matter of finding out from city officials, is someone allowed in the store, just this amount of space? The other thing that's funny is any Chinese restaurant or what have you, they almost follow the same policy. Like they'll take the tables and they'll just make like this U, so you could walk in and that's as far as you got. And it was like a thing that they all kind of followed, and I hope that sounds respectful and sensitive. But it was just interesting. And so, with us, curbside was just like, all right, man, feeling very much like I have a trench coat and here I'm going to give you comics. And so, but a lot of the times I would just meet them outside their car and I would just sit on the sidewalk and we would just talk. How are you doing? What's going on? You're still at work. Oh, okay. What's that like? So we would just talk. So there are a lot of similarities to the comic shop, which is a weekly place, and like the barber shop, where people would just kind of hang out for a bit, talk about life or whatever. And there's definitely some customers that that are just like, oh man, okay, this person either doesn't have anyone in their life that they could talk comics with, or this person kind of doesn't have anyone that they just talk with. And so there's that, and I do love that about it, until there's like a line of people behind them, and I'm just like, all right, man, I'll text me sometime, we're at a store. So yeah, curbside did happen, I will admit, before we finally got okay, because again, New York was just different. And that's the other thing. So here we are in New York, we're in Chemung County and we border Pennsylvania, Bradford County. So here we are with this discrepancy between PA and New York. And so, we just kind of had to deal with PA in a sense being 2 to 3, sometimes 4 weeks ahead of the curve or ahead of the reopening, the rephasing. And so, there was that. There was a matter of being patient. And there was the matter of being super patient with the rolling out of phases. Because luckily for Chemung County, our cases were low, so we were one of the first counties typically to have these phases. But that didn't go without not having it.
Right.
So I would anticipate it, but then I wasn't, kind of hatching my eggs or what have you. So curbside, I tried to make as fun as possible, and I am very grateful that the weather worked out in our favor. It wasn't freezing cold. It wasn't incredibly rainy or what have you. And so after kind of reading as much as I can and talking to city officials, I just went with the concept of, okay, no one's allowed in the store. And so I have kind of an entry on it or what have you. So I'm very fortunate. It is kind of the store design is kind of your very kind of classic downtown. You got your windows, and I don't even know what you describe that as.
Display window.
Thank you. Yes. Yep. So what I did is I took a roll and shelf, a shelf with wheels or what have you, just made it into a counter. And so just opened the door, just put it there, and voila, we were curbside, with this massive store that became a back room. And so it kept me busy because, people would, message me hey, I'm going to pop in, at noon or whatever. We put the chairs out. We had everyone, wear masks and, 6 feet apart and such. And so it just worked. It was good to see everyone. We would talk, and so that was really kind of the norm. People would message, we would get an idea of what they wanted, we would meet up and then kind of just not hang out, but hang out pretty much until oh, okay, hey, someone else is, they just pulled in, and that was really the way it worked. I would spend a good anywhere from, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then, the next customer, message me and, they would pop in, say at, 12:15, 12:31 or whatever. And so it was a lot of just kind of catching up, checking on people. How you doing? How are things? And, I guess, that's just kind of my attitude because I'm surrounded by people that enjoy this product, be it a product, that I sell. So there's enjoyment in the fact that there's gratitude. I think that's a huge word with me personally and with this store. There's gratitude that, I would meet up with them for curbside. There's gratitude that we survived because, again, everyone knows be it a store or a restaurant that did not survive. And so here's, one of their, favorite things. And they were just happy. They were just happy that, it's through all this, it will survive. Comics will survive. The store has survived. And so there's just a good feeling, and we just make it work. The other thing is my attitude wasn't to, be negative. It wasn't a matter of like, oh, can you believe Cuomo? Can you believe this? Like, can you believe we have to do curbside? This is so there's a phrase I don't like, and that's fair or unfair, Why? Why? Like, why? Like, why? Just, okay. Curbside. Yeah, let's do it. Let's have fun with it. It's goofy, okay, we're wearing masks. And that's the thing. So I'm a comic book store. So regular base of 100, 125, if I'm lucky, it goes up because, people visit and whatever. But yeah, on the regular, it's about 100, 125 people that I'll see. They're like, weekly or every other week or what have you. Never had a single argument about face mask. So, so there's a sign on the door. So I like bandanas mainly because I don't have to worry about them. They're around my neck. They go up, they go down, no problem. Easy. Let's go for simplicity. This is beautiful. And plus, again, when the CDC rolled out, like, hey, wear a face mask. I'm like, are you telling me, like, I get to look, so if I wear sunglasses,
superhero.
Yeah, well, there's the superhero or the Unabomber, which isn't funny, but a bank robber, a Western, cowboy. You're telling me this is part of my attire now, sunglasses and a bandana over my face. This is crazy. So I will share. What has happened though is like I've gotten like new customers. So there's been, people went 4 months without comics, or maybe they've been out of comics for like a year or two, and so the difficulty has been when brand new people come in, or say I had a customer, I did, that came in new in February. So like I knew enough to what they wanted. I knew their name. And so here it is back at like mid-July. And I'm like, I think, judging by your eyes and your eyebrow, I think that's who you are. Okay. And here's 70% of your face obscured by a face mask or a bandana, and I'm gauging by like, eye expressions. And so that hasn't been bad yet. I haven't called someone by the wrong name or what have you yet. And but that definitely happened that I noticed was when we were finally allowed to be like open, okay,
And that was when?
That's a tough one, because I don't have that exact date, because we were probably a week and a half behind when we could, mainly. Okay. So we have a lot of we have a lot of books. We have boxes of books. My policy for years was like, people would ask, do you buy comics? Yeah, I'll buy comics. No problem. You need money. I enjoy comics. I don't know if I need them, but whatever. So I shared that I was going through inventory, organizing inventory. So what I did was, I said, so we have a table, a folding table right here. So I set up about 10 folding tables, and they fit about 8 to 9 long boxes. So a long box holds about 200, if they're bagboarded, so from 200 to 250 comics. So, I don't know. So that's thousands of comics that I was trying to kind of organize and go through. And when I mean organize, I would just take collections that I bought and just organize them by publisher. So this box is Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Indies, other. And then I would go from those to be like, okay, this is a box of Superman, whatever. So, I would hang with my kids, and then when I wasn't with my kids, I would just organize. And then organize is tough because then I would just end up reading. So the store was not, so curbside wasn't bad because I was still just organizing stuff. And then, and the way that things rolled out, we would just do curbside until we were told, like, oh, okay, you're okay if you follow these parameters to open. And it was a very day-by-day thing. And so there came a point where I was just like, okay, we could technically open, but the store does not look like a store yet. It still looks like a warehouse. So I don't have an exact date. But when we opened, people were just, they were happy. They were happy. They were grateful. I compared it to after, like a weather situation. Not we don't get hurricanes around here, but whether like a snowstorm or a bad storm, neighbors check on neighbors. Hey, how you doing? Hey, we had 3 feet of snow. You okay? That was absolutely the attitude. Hey, how you doing? Hey, you made it. I was, people were worried. Because of online, people would, see stories about comic shops that closed down. And so no one's dumb, people know of, my goodness, that's the other thing about like, it's funny because we've already been like an hour. I didn't even get into like Robinhood and that app, and I could talk about that app because it's beautiful. But that's the thing about like paying attention to the stock market, the amount of businesses that went bankrupt, about to go bankrupt, in trouble. It was on people's minds, and so, when we were able to open, just a feeling of gratitude, definitely. And, that's why my story is different from other people's stories, because, I was not an essential worker. I wasn't in the medical field, or I'm not in the medical field. So, I try to be very mindful about what I went through, how I went through it. People could probably say, oh man, you're kind of a spoiled brat. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's weird, but I didn't have the experience that others did. And I'm very grateful for the experience that people did have. Again, a ton of my friends, still worked. I had, friends that work in retail, friends that, work, restaurant and food and what have you. And so, for me, my attitude is just not to complain, to not be ungrateful, to not be mean or calloused or entitled is a word. I think, one of the things I said to a lot of my friends was, this is gonna sound tough. Productive people stay productive, and that's not to put anyone down. It's not. When you're in this industry, you got to put out product. You're rewarded for putting out books, stories, for getting your book out monthly or whatever. You're rewarded for that. It's just like artists, musicians. If you put out an album every year and a half, every 2 years, you're relevant. It's when you go 5 years without putting out an album, people are like, oh, what happened to that band? Entertainment is that way. And so, my friends that, are just naturally productive people, they just kept busy. They would write, they would draw. And it wasn't easy, because a lot of them, have families. And so, this wasn't a time without stress or anxiety, because, they would love just to sit at a desk and just work on what they enjoy. But just like me, they had to teach their kids, and again, I know a lot of teachers, and so, God bless them. God bless, everyone except for the whiners, I'll say. So I just, that's just, at the end of this interview, it's cool that it's going to be kept for, what's the word? Is it posterity?
Posterity.
Thank you. Yes. So people 20 years, 30 years from now, that's my story. My story is not everything was awful. So does that make me a brat? I don't know.
So you work here. You also work at the Heights Theater as the assistant manager.
Yep.
They were closed.
They were. They are. And that's...
And do they have any guidance on when? No? Okay.
No, that is, yeah, that's, so again, the negative side of this is the effects on, yeah, I mean, again, they're a small business. You know, they're a one-screen theater, a staff of, you know, fluctuate from like 6 to 8, and bare bones, we'd be okay with a couple of us. You know, my mantra is, you know, things will be okay. Everything will be okay. That's a topic that I don't know if I can say that.
Okay. So you haven't heard whether or not they'll be surviving
Right.
this pandemic apocalypse.
Yeah.
All right. So you haven't heard anything about how it's going to impact the movie theater and whether or not you'll still have a job there.
Yeah.
How has that impacted you economically? Because now you only have the store for income,
Right.
as opposed to the other jobs that you work to keep the store afloat.
Right. Very true. So we're in July, so August. So I'm choosing to be hopeful. I'm trying to think if the word is like, you know, am I being silly or am I being overly optimistic? So right now AMC, I think, announced that they weren't open their theaters until like August or so. Realistically, so Broadway, you know, is closed until January. So I'm now looking at kind of the date of like September, October. You know, technology, again, so technology is our friend, you know, in general, and technology could be our asset, savior? I don't know, because again, vaccines or what have you. And what I mean is, you know, where are we at with like HVAC systems, with air purification systems and what have you. So if there's guidance on, yes, you know, this filter is good or it's good enough, or this system, you know, this misting system or air purification system, when we get guidance, I think that will make all the difference. The question is how soon, because I do get it. I do get the difference between an open air gathering, a farmer's market or what have you, a baseball game where, again, it's social distance and 6 feet apart, you know, from other fans, versus an enclosed building. So, you know, as much as I want us to be told like, okay, you know, only 25% maximum occupancy, you know, I get it, because again, it's air. And again, that's why air travel is so scary. It's a group of people in a small enclosed recycled air, you know, area. So I do get it. As much as I want the theater to open, again, I'm just not the type of person where I'm just like, I'm so angry, this doesn't make sense. Well, the fact of the matter, it does make sense. And so, but on the flip side, I'm not the type to just be like, oh, well, we're going to sit on our hands until we're told. I just, you know, what could we look into, you know? Because again, there are things, there is technology. What do we need to do? And so, yeah, so there has not been that guidance yet. There hasn't been that advice yet. And again, I get people's anger, because I think successful people are often, you know, kind of like type A go-getters, and maybe they come off as brash or annoying or whatever, but they're certainly not the type to wait to be told or what have you. And so I think that's, you know, there's a lot of different people, and that's why I think there is anger or what have you, because I think most people just don't want to sit around. You know, they realize they have to work hard, and there is that. There's people who worked super hard this whole time, and it's just frustration, you know, to not be able to.
Okay. You talked about the Robinhood app.
Yeah. So okay, here we go. All right, I'll try to make this one quick. So I can't be happy enough or talk enough about Robinhood. So, you know, here I am. Oh, geez, middle age. Gosh, it's terrible. You know, I'm no longer in my 20s. So, I mean, so running a business, you know, you have to be mindful of retirement. So I've always, you know, put money into a 401k, an IRA, you know, retirement fund and what have you, because I'm in charge of my own retirement. And so, you know, the stock market was there. And of course, it's involved with an IRA. But it was always just there, like away at that table. And so, okay, here I am, a business owner. So there's a certain amount of like, all right, I want to get my hands involved in this pies and get my hands dirty and do it or whatever. So investing in the stock market was never really accessible. It was always like, okay, you're going to be charged for this, you're going to be charged for that. And so it's tough for me to like really promote, because again, it's a big corporation, it's a big app. But, here's this company was the very first to say, okay, you can buy and sell stock and invest in the stock market at zero charge per transaction. So whether you're buying one stock or 500 stock, it's zero. Now, again, the caveat is, are they selling your information? Okay, sure. I have a phone. I have Facebook. My information's everywhere. Google, you visit a store and then the very next 5 minutes you see store ads on Facebook or whatever. I'm used to that. It's 2020. And so here we are. I'm seeing it. You always hear, oh, okay, you should, buy when the stocks are low and then, invest and sell high or what have you. So in March, it was everyone knew. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'm an idiot if I just sit around some more. So before like everything was shut down, I wish I had the exact date because it was like March, whatever, 16th, 20th, whatever. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's do this. Download a dumb app, whatever. I can always delete it. I could always put $50 into it or whatever. And it was one of the things that really did get me through quarantine, because I wanted to be away from social media. I didn't want to be on Facebook. I didn't even want to be on Instagram. I just didn't want to be on my phone, but I'll pop open that app. And so the idea of like seeing money expand, multiply, that's great. That's positive. Now it's the stock market. It didn't last. But I mean, I was investing a little bit here and there, near the bottom. And you can look, I mean, the bottom for the most part was like March 16th or what have you. And then, it kind of went up and then it bottomed out again. But it was something, because we're just always on as humans, we're always on our phone or whatever. Some people are much better than others. But if I was going to be on my phone, I at least wanted to see, like, because there's a feeling of like, oh, awesome, I did well. Everyone wants to do well. Everyone wants to feel kind of smart or whatever. And there was a time when stocks were stupid low and then they were going up, like any investor was feeling like pretty good. It has not stayed, but there became a group of us. There became a group of us where we were like text, and it was something to like study. And so I spent a ton of time just reading, and it was like nerdy or it was like whatever, but it was enjoyable. It was something, to learn. And there definitely was a meme out there saying like during this quarantine, if you don't take time to get a new hobby or study or read a book, you wasted it. And there was backlash being like, well, don't tell people what to do and you're just going to cause like anxiety or whatever. And that's fine. There are two different types of people. They look at this opportunity, this time, and they do. They want something out of it. They want to say, I got out of it this. I read this book. I painted this. I did this. And then there's the people that are just like, I just want to survive. Mental health, I'm very, very, very respectful and what have you, because boy, did I go through some very depressing times in my life. And so we are all different as people. And so, not everyone, everyone's kind of anxiety or angst is different. Sometimes it is based on productivity. Sometimes it is just based on opinions or what have you. So again, I can only talk about me in the sense of this is what I did or what worked for me. And it was great because sports ended, so that means no sports gambling. And I knew in the middle of this, I said, I'm not the only one. I know that there are just millions of people that will probably flock to the stock market to either keep busy or to gamble their money or what have you. And that was a cool feeling to be right, because then it was revealed. There are like, I wish I knew, but there are like articles about the amount of people that joined Webull and Robinhood for numerous reasons. For just knowing, okay, buy stocks when they're low, or man, there's no sports to bet on, I'm just going to jump into this, because it's all to say that the stock market isn't legalized gambling, whatever.
I've heard it described as astrology for men.
Ah! Shit! That's like that a lot. I'm gonna write that down. I like that a lot. That's awesome. So, but I loved it because, again, I'm very mindful of, I guess, financial situations. You know, again, being broke. You know, I'll describe myself as a broke person or whatever. And so, you know, there's definitely, you know, are you kidding me? What's more like this level of like wealth and status than like Wall Street? You know, I couldn't be anywhere near, because I wouldn't want to be anywhere near. I really would have very little in common with people who wear, you know, $10,000 suits versus me wears, you know, I don't even know. That's a Vans t-shirt today. You know, but you know, it's a great feeling to almost, in a sense, like being told you can't have this, you know, you need money. And again, that's where I'll go back to comics. You know, comics has very little to do with money in one sense, in the sense that like it's hard to make a living being a comic creator, but at the end of the day, like, you don't have to pay $5 to draw. It's not a club you got to join or whatever. And so, you know, DIY culture and punk rock and what have you, it's hard to say like invest in this punk rock, but man, you're in charge of your, in a sense, destiny. So that's why it's funny, astrology. Yeah, because I mean, you could blow money, but you could also do your research and be like, hey, this looks like something, you know? And so I could talk your ear off about where I kind of put some money, and I put it into like kind of like some funds that pay dividends or what have you. And so, yeah, so it's cool. It was cool. And it definitely was a big thing of my kind of COVID experience, and for millions of others. And it was just it was positive. It wasn't as profitable as I would have liked it to have been, because that's the stock market. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's an investment that hopefully will continue to be a good one. And again, it's another aspect of, you know, my retirement or what have you.
Okay, good.
Definitely.
So it occurs to me that this year we did not have Free Comic Book Day,
Without
which
a
is
doubt.
usually the first Saturday in May.
You are correct.
So you didn't have that.
Right.
How much business do you usually do on Free
Yeah.
Comic Book Day? It's
Yeah.
like your busiest day, isn't it?
Definitely, and it is. And so we look at it as it's paramount for the industry. It is the biggest kind of like advertiser. And again, I'm okay with the fact that I always have to kind of put it out there. Hey, comic books exist. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Because there are not a lot of comic book stores, and sadly, there's not even a lot of like bookstores anymore. You know, like Borders, I don't think as a chain really
they're
exists.
gone.
Yeah. So there's less bookstores, which means there's less books on shelves, which means there's less eyeballs seeing it. You know, like our mall doesn't have a bookstore at all, and there's I think a lot of malls that just don't have bookstores. So accessibility to comics is a bit of a problem, is a bit of an issue. So Free Comic Book Day is definitely kind of like the Christmas of comic shops. And so, yeah, we get in thousands, and, you know, good weather, you know, we'll see hundreds of people or what have you. You know, it is an investment of time and energy and money. And so the industry is a bit disrupted, because what a lot of publishers will do is release a Free Comic Book Day book that says, okay, here's what to look forward to. Here's a tease for the big event for the summer. So things are disrupted. Yeah, comics in general are disrupted.
Have they resumed printing?
They have, but it's slow.
Okay.
It is a slog. Yeah, it's like I said, nothing is normal. So.
Alrighty. Anything else that you'd like to add about anything we've discussed?
Let me check my notes. So no, I do. So the only thing I need gyms to reopen. So, yeah, no, I hope, you know, for all of my friends and acquaintances and people, you know, that you know, that haven't been able to, you know, so, you know, there's theaters, there's gyms, there's other businesses that still haven't been able to open. You know, I hope that there's an answer soon. I mean, I don't know. Just let's all work together. Let's all be good to each other. We can disagree, not a problem. But man, like, is your opinion, your point of view is it everything to you? Like, you know, I would ask that to my friends or what have you, and it's sad. Like, is it so important that you're going to be disrespectful to other people, that you're going to lose friendships and change your life because of an opinion that you have, you know? And for some people, yeah, the answer is yes. Yep, it's important, and I'm not going to be friends with that person, or I'm not going to talk to that person, or what have you, or I'm not going to go to the store or whatever, and that's fine. Like, they're allowed. But, you know, let's just, I don't know, let's be respectful to each other, and we'll get through this.
All right. Well, thank you for talking with me.
You got it, bud. Absolutely.